I live in Iowa, where less than 5% of the land area is in public land. Of that public land, most of it is in roadsides. So roadsides are one of our best areas for trying to squeeze some habitat in the landscape. And of the roadsides, most of it consists of county roadsides. Iowa has 760,000 acres of county roadsides. It's a really dense network throughout the state. We've been doing IRVM and managing our roadsides ecologically since 1988. That's when the Iowa State Legislature passed legislation saying that Iowa's roadsides shall be preserved, planted, and maintained to be safe, visually interesting, ecologically integrated, and useful for many purposes. The legislation said the IRVM shall be practiced on state roadsides, and it may be practiced on secondary roads. So it's voluntary at the county level. I'm the statewide coordinator for the IRVM program for the county roadsides. So a large part of my job is trying to build support within counties for programs and to encourage new counties to do IRVM. This map shows how active different counties are throughout the state. Counties in green have a roadside vegetation manager. Often these people have a conservation background. They know their plants really well. They know how to operate heavy equipment and plant the roadsides, maintain the roadsides and natives. So the counties that are most involved are in green. They have someone who's dedicated to IRVM at the county level. The number shows how many years out of the last 21 years the county has gotten native seed through a federal highways grant. The Federal Highways Administration gives us a grant to provide usually around 1,200, 1,300 acres worth of seed every year to counties that request it. So the number shows how many years they've gotten the seed. And the little check mark is supposed to be a plant, and it shows if they have an IRVM plan on file with the DOT. That makes them eligible to apply for grant money for equipment. So you can see there's kind of a neighboring county effect. It tends to spread to neighboring counties, so it's kind of a social phenomenon. Now, if a county decides to hire a roadside vegetation manager, that person can either work for the county engineer, so they're in the secondary roads department. They can work in the conservation department. Sometimes they work for both. And in 5 cases, they're independent. They report directly to the county board of supervisors. So you can see from this map, I work with different communities of county officials across the state. About 2/3 of the roadside managers, the counties in orange, they work for secondary roads. Around 1/3 work for county conservation in green. So in my world, the key decision makers are the boards of supervisors. They have the ultimate say. They control the budget. They decide if the county's going to get a roadside manager, if they're going to get a roadside program. Conservation board directors can be key in influencing the board of supervisors. 2 years ago, I presented to this working group about a survey I did of county engineers and roadside managers, so 2 of the communities I work with, and today I'm going to talk more about these decision makers, what I've learned about working with these communities. So I've been in my position for 4 years, and I realized if I'm going to work with these groups, I need to understand them. I need to understand their opinions about roadsides. I need to understand their values. I just didn't want to go out there and start making PowerPoint presentations, and this is why you should do IRVM. I just realized I want to understand these groups first. So right when I started, I need to do surveys and understand these communities better before I just go out there and present information. So this is kind of the reasoning why I decided to do surveys. So the framework I used to understand the communities was community-based social marketing. In 2015, I attended a workshop by Dr. Doug Mackenzie Moore. He's an environmental psychologist who has worked with over 20,000 environmental conservationists across the country and the world. He works to improve environmental programs using social psychology. These are a couple of the books he's authored. So community-based social marketing combines psychology, trying to understand people's habits, perceptions, how they change, with social marketing, which uses peers and community culture It combines these techniques to affect behavior change, to encourage behavior change. Some of the traditional sources I've used in my program: radio, television, internet, newsprint, brochures. Science research has shown these are useful for increasing awareness and affecting attitudes. So they're useful. I still do them for those purposes, but they're less effective with affecting behaviors. And that's where I'm at in my program. I want to see more behavior change on the ground, which is why I'm turning more towards social psychology, collaborating with social scientists, because I want to see behavior change. I not only want to increase awareness and attitudes, I want to see some more change. I want to influence behaviors. This approach can turn attitudes into action. It's delivered at the community level. It focuses on removing barriers and enhancing an activity's benefits. In 2017, I got funding from the Iowa Living Roadway Trust Fund to conduct a survey of the County Conservation Board directors and the chairs of the county boards of supervisors. One position was vacant for the County Conservation Board directors, but otherwise we surveyed every single county, whether or not they had a program, just to see what they thought about IRVM. I collaborated with social scientists at the UNI, University of Northern Iowa, Center for Social and Behavioral Research to implement this survey. We had an excellent response rate as far as surveys go. 64% of the Conservation Board directors and 51% of the Boards of Supervisors responded. The results are summarized in the report, which is on the Tallgrass Prairie website, Tallgrass Prairie Center website, under the IRVM program page if you're interested in seeing the whole report. I'm just going to give you a couple of results. And there's lots of information. We understand how they think about all aspects of IRVM, but just to give you a snapshot of the kind of information we got. One of the questions we asked was, how much impact does each of the following items have on your county's decisions about roadside vegetation management? The blue color on the top line represents the Conservation Board director's response. The second line is the Board of Supervisors in green. So the darker color on the far right means they thought this has quite a bit of impact on how they decide how to manage roadsides. Not unsurprisingly, consideration of safety was first, followed by maintenance cost savings. Public feedback is important. Snow control, soil erosion, those are the top considerations. Notice where pollinators and other wildlife falls. For both groups, not just the supervisors, the Conservation Board directors, which I was a little surprised. This is why I do surveys, because I need to test my assumptions. I assumed there'd be more differences in these two groups. But for both groups, pollinators and other wildlife was one of the least concerns when they think about how to manage roadside vegetation. It doesn't factor into their priorities. So this affects how I'm going to communicate with these communities, doesn't it? I'm not going to go out there right from the start and say, oh, this is why we want to help pollinators. I need to focus more on addressing other benefits. Another question we asked, were there any barriers to your county's implementation of IRVM practices? Another surprise, the Conservation Board thought there were more barriers than the County Board of Supervisors. So of those who said there were barriers to implementing IRVM, we asked them, well, what are the barriers? So for both groups, some of the strongest barriers included other concerns just being a higher priority, the cost of starting a program, lack of elected officials or staff support, lack of staff capacity support, lack of community support, and insufficient proof of cost savings. For many of them in the survey, they recognized the benefits. That wasn't a problem. It's just the barriers. That's what keeps them from wanting to do IRVM. So from these surveys, I know that the public's pretty important. It came out in the county engineer survey as well. What the public thinks influences if they're going to have IRVM. A book I've read called Navigating Environmental Attitudes included this great quote. Rather than educating the public, we perhaps first need the public to educate us a bit. So this leads into one of the strategies I would like to use to use the results of these surveys. So the next step in community-based social marketing is to do a pilot study, to do a pilot strategy to figure out how you're going to influence behaviors. I guess the main pilot strategy I would like to try next is having workshops with the public. And I'd like these to be a dialogue to understand better what are their concerns about having natives in the roadsides. What do they see the benefits to be? So I'm coordinating with Trees Forever, even though Trees is in their names, and that's a big emphasis of Trees Forever. They have a lot of experience in conducting community workshops and building ground level support in communities for planting natives, largely trees, but they also have experience with getting communities to plant natives for beautification purposes, for example, in their towns. So I'm going to leverage their strengths in getting community support with some of my knowledge about the Roadside program, and we'd like to have workshops in 4 counties in Iowa, 2 that have no program at all, and 2 that do have programs. So I think it's important to not only just keep getting it out there, trying to get new projects, programs going, but to take the time to continue to build support for the existing programs. I think the temptation is just to go out there more and more and more, but we want to build support for the existing counties as well. So we're going to try to find a way we can attract a lot of the key landowners, not just the ones who like natives, but maybe the ones who have concerns and questions about it. Get them in the same room, get them out in the field to look at some roadside plantings and get to understand them better and try to figure out, are there any people in this group who are really key influences in their community who can maybe talk to the county officials and build support that way. So that's the direction I'm heading with this, is just trying to understand the communities better and leveraging their key messengers within the community. I think they'll be more effective than just me going out and doing PowerPoints, for example. So that's where I'm thinking. We're going to try to find funding to get that pilot program in place. I'm going to leave you with a few resources. These 3 articles are pretty quick and easy reads, and I thought they're really helpful for explaining how social science can be used to make your communication strategies more focused and effective and strategic. Because my background is just writing. I have some communications background in writing magazine articles and such. But I thought they were really helpful for how do you actually influence people to change their behavior? How do you use social science research in effective communication strategy? So that's a good starting point if you want to learn more about this approach, the social science approach, because I think there's a lot of really good ideas there. And with that, I'll take some questions if there's time. Yes.
Research or findings cover addressing kids as far as learning their environment, or anything addressing kids in your research as far as this subject?
At least in this research I've been doing for the IRVM program, I haven't done much with kids at this point. My priority has been the decision makers within the county. But in the future, I know we want to reach future generations, and sometimes the kids can talk to their parents, and I think that's a good group to consider. I think as we do these workshops and we interact with the public more, maybe that would be a next step, is just ask them, how do we reach out to kids too and get them to see the value? Maybe there's outreach within certain school groups or the classes. So I think that's a good consideration for our next step. Anything else?
So when you say identifying key influencers, one question that we've run into in some of the work that we're doing is a lot of these key influencers or the kind of influential people, they're getting hit up a lot. So they're the same people that are getting hit up by their commodity groups and stuff that I do with farmers or conservation groups. They're kind of getting hit again and again. So how do you, I guess, when you find those people that are willing to be involved, get around the possibility that they are kind of tapped out already?
That's a good point. Maybe there's a way, if it has to do with conservation in general, maybe there's a way we can maximize, I guess, or be really respectful of their time and see if there's a way we can maximize make the most of their time speaking to others or the county, or if there's people they can influence. And that's a really good question. I know Practical Farmers of Iowa has also started using community-based social marketing, for example. So maybe if there's a way I can work out something with them and make sure we're not using the same people too much. That's a good question. Thank you for the consideration. Yes.
So of the statistics you showed, what were the 2 or 3 biggest obstacles that you saw to your work? You know, to take your work to the next step beyond giving just PowerPoints and trying to really be effective.
The obstacles that I see based on
from the research, yeah.
From the research, it's just building that support within the community, getting them to see that it's a priority, that there's enough benefits. The benefits outweigh the costs in social terms, I'm thinking, not just money, costs, and benefits. Because in my findings, at least the counties, it's not so much the costs and benefits, it's just the social support. And that takes time and energy, but I think this pilot program will tell us a lot. Well, I think we're going to learn a lot within communities. How do you build that?